I'm Sophia Williams, 22, and I grew up believing my family struggled financially. My childhood was filled with lectures about saving money and making sacrifices. So imagine my shock when I discovered my parents had refused to help with my college expenses while secretly funding my sister's lavish lifestyle. I worked 3 jobs and took out loans while Amanda enjoyed a fully paid education and apartment in NYC. Everything changed when my grandfather uncovered their deception. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, hit that like button, and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal and unexpected justice. Growing up in a modest 2-story home in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, Massachusetts, I never questioned that we had what my father called just enough. Our life wasn't extravagant, but it was comfortable. My sister Amanda came along when I was 3, completing our family of 4. From the beginning, she had a natural charisma that drew people to her. With her golden curls and infectious laugh, she charmed everyone she met, especially our parents. My mother, Lisa, worked in hospital administration at Boston Medical Center. She managed schedules and paperwork with the same precision she applied to keeping our home immaculate. My father, Robert, was an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. He was strict about finances, constantly reminding us that every penny counts, and you don't get anything in this world without working for it. These phrases became the soundtrack of my childhood. The only person who seemed immune to Amanda's spell was my grandfather Harold, my father's dad. A retired business owner who'd built a successful chain of hardware stores throughout New England, Grandpa Harold lived just 20 minutes away in a comfortable house with a view of the harbor. He visited at least once a week, always bringing small gifts for both Amanda and me. When he caught me building elaborate structures with blocks at age 7, he started bringing me architecture magazines and books instead of toys. "You've got a good eye for design, Sophie," he'd say, using his special nickname for me. "I bet you'll build something remarkable someday." Those were the moments I felt truly seen. At home, praise was scarce for me, but abundant for Amanda. When I brought home straight A's in elementary school, my mother would briefly glance at my report card and say, "That's what we expect from you." But when Amanda managed to pull B's and C's, there were celebrations and ice cream outings. "Your sister needs more encouragement," my mother explained when I questioned this. "Learning doesn't come as easily to her as it does to you." I accepted this explanation, trying to suppress the flicker of resentment that sparked in my chest. After all, I didn't want to be the jealous older sister. So I doubled my efforts, joining the math club, the science club, and the school newspaper. Each achievement was met with the same lukewarm acknowledgement from my parents. The differences in our treatment became more obvious as we grew older. For my 10th birthday, I received a set of drawing pencils and a sketchbook. For Amanda's 10th birthday 3 years later, she got a lavish party at an indoor water park with 15 friends and a new tablet. When I mentioned the disparity, my father frowned. "We're in a better financial position now than we were when you turned 10, he explained. "Besides, you've never been interested in big parties." It was true that I preferred quiet celebrations, but I hadn't been given the option. Still, I nodded and retreated to my room to sketch building designs. That was the year I decided I wanted to become an architect, creating spaces where everyone would feel equally valued. My relationship with Grandpa Harold deepened during my middle school years. He was the one who attended my academic award ceremonies when my parents were too busy with Amanda's dance recitals. He listened intently when I explained my designs for eco-friendly housing or innovative public spaces. "You're going to need a top-notch education to bring these ideas to life," he told me when I was 13. "Start thinking about colleges with strong architecture programs." Meanwhile, Amanda developed an expensive taste in clothes and electronics. While I saved my allowance, which was noticeably smaller than hers, for books and art supplies, she spent hers immediately on trendy items, then somehow managed to get additional funds from our parents. "She needs to fit in socially," my mother whispered to my father one evening when they thought I couldn't hear. "Sophia's different. She's more independent." Independent wasn't how I would have described myself. Self-sufficient, perhaps, but only because I'd learned early that my needs came second. I threw myself into academic competitions, volunteer work, and any activity that might strengthen my college applications. If I couldn't win my parents' approval through normal achievements, perhaps exceptional ones would do the trick. By the time I reached high school, I'd developed a quiet resilience. I still longed for my parents' recognition, but I'd found other sources of validation: my teachers' praise, my grandfather's unwavering support, and my own growing confidence in my abilities. What I didn't know then was that the pattern of favoritism I'd experienced throughout childhood was about to become something far more damaging. My high school years were a carefully orchestrated symphony of academic excellence and strategic extracurriculars. While other teenagers spent weekends at the mall or going to parties, I divided my time between advanced placement coursework, the architecture club I'd founded sophomore year, and volunteering with Habitat for Humanity to gain hands-on construction experience. By 16, I'd added another component to my packed schedule: a part-time job at a local coffee shop. Every Saturday and Sunday morning, I'd wake at 5 a.m. to serve lattes and cappuccinos to half-asleep customers. The pay wasn't great, but every dollar went straight into my college fund. "You don't need to work so hard," my mother commented once when she saw me counting my savings. "We've always told you we'll help with college." That promise remained vague, but I clung to it. After all, my parents had steady jobs and had never indicated we were in financial trouble. Still, my father's frequent lectures about financial responsibility and the value of earning your own way had instilled in me a drive to contribute as much as possible to my education. Meanwhile, Amanda floated through high school with a C+ average and a robust social life. Her bedroom looked like a boutique, with designer clothes spilling from her closet and the latest electronics charging on her nightstand. When I asked how she afforded these luxuries on her allowance, she shrugged. "Mom and Dad understand that. Social connections are important for my future," she said, applying another coat of expensive nail polish. "Not everyone can be a brainiac like you." During my junior year, I began researching architecture programs in earnest. Cornell University became my dream school. Their program was consistently ranked among the top 5 in the country. When I mentioned this to my parents over dinner, my father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ivy League schools are extremely expensive, Sophia," he said, exchanging glances with my mother. "Maybe you should consider state options." "But with my GPA and extracurriculars, I might qualify for scholarships," I countered. "And you've always said education is important." "Of course it is," my mother interjected smoothly. "We just want you to be practical." Practical became their favorite word whenever college came up. Still, I applied to Cornell and 5 other schools with strong architecture programs, including 2 state universities as backups. My guidance counselor, Ms. Patel, reviewed my applications and nodded approvingly. "With your credentials, you should get into most of these," she said. "The question will be financing." "Have you had the money talk with your parents yet?" I hadn't, not specifically. Whenever I tried to pin them down on numbers, they changed the subject or gave non-committal answers about seeing what we can manage when the time comes. The acceptance letters began arriving in spring of senior year. Cornell said yes, along with 3 other top programs. My hands trembled as I showed the Cornell letter to my parents, expecting at least this achievement would earn their enthusiasm. "We need to discuss this," my father said, his expression unreadable. "Let's talk after dinner." That evening became etched in my memory as the moment my world shifted. We sat at the dining room table, my Cornell acceptance letter between us like an unwelcome guest. "Sophia," my father began, folding his hands, "we're very proud of your acceptance, but we need to be realistic about finances. Your mother and I have reviewed our situation, and we simply can't afford to contribute to your college education." The statement hit me like a physical blow. "What? But you've always said—" "We said we'd help if we could," my mother interrupted. "But with the economy and our current obligations, it's just not possible." "What obligations?" I asked, my voice rising. We live in a paid-off house. Both of you have stable jobs. There are things you don't understand about adult finances, my father said dismissively. The responsible thing would be to start at community college and transfer later, or take a gap year to save more money. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Amanda starts college next year, too. Are you telling her the same thing? My parents exchanged another look, one I couldn't interpret. Your sister's situation is different, my mother said carefully. She has different needs. The conversation ended with me retreating to my room, shell-shocked. The next day, I made appointments with financial aid officers at all the universities that had accepted me. I applied for every scholarship I could find, even ones where I barely met the criteria. I increased my coffee shop hours and added a second job shelving books at the local library. Ms. Patel helped me navigate federal loans and work-study options. I've never seen a student work this hard to make college happen, she said. Your determination is remarkable, Sophia. While I scrambled to piece together funding, Amanda casually mentioned she'd been accepted to a small private college in New York with decent financial aid. When I asked about specifics, she was vague. Mom and Dad are handling all that boring paperwork stuff, she said with a wave of her hand. I just need to pick my meal plan and dorm preferences. The contrast in our situations couldn't have been more stark. I spent my final high school months working 30 hours a week on top of maintaining my grades, while Amanda attended a series of senior parties and shopped for dorm room decor. By graduation, I'd secured a partial scholarship to the State University's architecture program, along with loans and a work-study position. It wasn't Cornell, but it was a solid program that wouldn't leave me in crippling debt. As I accepted my diploma, I searched the audience for my family. My parents and Amanda were there, looking appropriately proud. But it was Grandpa Harold's beaming face that gave me strength. The one person who never questioned my worth or my dreams. You've only just begun, he whispered when he hugged me after the ceremony. The best is yet to come. I wanted to believe him. But as summer progressed and I watched my parents help Amanda prepare for college, buying her new clothes, a laptop, and dorm supplies, while offering me nothing but advice on budgeting wisely, doubt crept in. If their financial situation was truly so strained, how could they afford all this for my sister? The question lingered, but I pushed it aside. I needed to focus on my own path forward, even if I had to walk it alone. August arrived with sweltering heat and the reality of my new life. While Amanda departed for her private college orientation in a car filled with new belongings, I packed my few possessions into my grandfather's old sedan. The State University had accepted me into their architecture program, not Cornell, but still respectable. My partial scholarship covered about 40% of my tuition, with federal loans bridging some of the gap. The rest would come from my savings and ongoing work. My new home was a cramped apartment 15 minutes from campus, shared with 3 other students trying to minimize living expenses. My room, if you could call it that, was barely large enough for a twin bed and a desk. The closet-sized space had one saving grace, a window that allowed natural light for my drafting work. It has potential, my mother said when she and my father dropped by briefly after helping Amanda settle into her dorm. They didn't stay long, citing the long drive back to Boston. Classes started, and I quickly established a punishing routine. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays began with classes from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., followed by shifts at the campus library until 9 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I attended classes until noon, then worked at a local cafe from 1 p.m. until closing. Weekends were split between studying, studio time, and additional cafe shifts. Sleep became a luxury, averaging 4 to 5 hours a night. The architecture program was rigorous, demanding precision and creativity in equal measure. Many of my classmates struggled even with their full attention dedicated to studies. I fought to keep up while working 30 hours a week, often completing design projects in the dead of night under my desk lamp while my roommates slept. By October, the physical toll became evident. I lost weight my already slim frame couldn't afford to lose. Dark circles took permanent residence under my eyes. During one design critique, I nearly fainted from a combination of exhaustion and having skipped meals to finish my project. "Ms. Williams," Professor Carlson said after class, his bushy eyebrows furrowed with concern, "your work shows promise, but your current pace is unsustainable. Is everything all right?" I considered lying but found myself too tired to manufacture a convincing story. "Financial constraints," I admitted. "I need to work to stay enrolled." He nodded thoughtfully. "Many students face similar challenges. Have you explored all scholarship options? The department has some discretionary funds for exceptional students." That conversation led to a small departmental scholarship the following semester. Not enough to quit either job, but sufficient to reduce my hours slightly. It was the first kindness I'd encountered in months, and it brought me to tears in the privacy of my room. Phone calls home became increasingly rare and uncomfortable. My parents asked cursory questions about my classes but changed the subject. When I mentioned financial struggles, when I asked about Amanda, they brightened noticeably. "She's adapting beautifully," my mother gushed during one call. "She's joined a sorority and is thinking about business marketing as a major." "How's she handling her work-study job?" I asked, assuming she at least had one like most students. A pause. "Oh, we wanted her to focus on academics and social networking her first year. Those connections are so important for her future." The statement hung between us like an accusation. Why was Amanda's focus valued while I was expected to manage everything simultaneously? I swallowed the question, knowing it would only lead to another lecture about different needs and personal responsibility. During my first visit home, for Thanksgiving, I noticed changes in our house. New furniture in the living room, a renovated kitchen with stainless steel appliances. Amanda's room sported fresh paint and a queen-sized bed replacing her old double. "Business has been good at Dad's firm," my mother explained when she caught me staring at the new refrigerator. "We needed some updates." The holiday was tense, with Amanda dominating conversation with stories about her sorority sisters and professors who totally loved her. When my father asked about my studies, I gave brief answers, knowing my reality. Exhaustion, ramen noodles, and constant anxiety about money would dampen the mood. Back at school, winter brought new challenges. My apartment's heating system failed regularly, forcing me to work in the library until closing time. A particularly harsh week of freezing temperatures coincided with midterm projects and a stomach virus that swept through campus. I pushed through fevers and nausea, unable to afford missing work shifts. Professor Carlson found me in the studio, at midnight, shivering despite the building's heat, trying to complete a model with trembling hands. "Sophia," he said gently, "you're ill. You need rest." "Deadline," I mumbled, gluing another piece to my scale model. "I'm extending your deadline by 3 days," he said firmly. "As your academic advisor, I'm concerned about your well-being. This isn't just about grades anymore." That night I finally broke down. In my cold apartment, wrapped in every blanket I owned, I called the one person I knew would listen without judgment, Grandpa Harold. "Sophie," his warm voice came through the phone, instantly comforting. "It's been too long. How are you really doing?" The simple question of genuine concern demolished my carefully constructed facade. Between sobs, I confessed everything: the grueling schedule, the physical exhaustion, the isolation from normal college experiences, and the growing suspicion that my struggles were unnecessary given my parents' apparent financial comfort. "This isn't right," he said after listening patiently. "Your parents told me they were contributing to your education. I specifically asked them about both you and Amanda." His revelation added confusion to my emotional turmoil. Why would they lie to him? "I'm sending you something," he said decisively. "Not charity, but an investment in your future. And I'll be looking into this situation more closely." 3 days later, a check arrived with a note. "For tuition and living expenses this semester. Focus on your education. We'll talk more soon. All my love, Grandpa. The amount was enough to quit one of my jobs and move to a better apartment with reliable heating. I cried again, but this time from relief. That night, I slept 8 hours for the first time in months. When I called to thank him, Grandpa Harold had one request. Don't tell your parents about this arrangement for now. I need to understand what's really happening first. I agreed, not fully comprehending his concern but grateful for the reprieve. With one job instead of two, I could breathe again. My grades improved. I even occasionally joined classmates for study sessions that sometimes evolved into actual social interactions. What I didn't know then was that my grandfather's intervention was just the beginning. The real revelation and reckoning still awaited. Spring semester progressed with a more manageable rhythm, thanks to Grandpa Harold's help. For the first time since starting college, I occasionally enjoyed small pleasures: a movie night with classmates, extra hours in the studio refining, designs beyond basic requirements, and even a full night's sleep before exams. The dark circles under my eyes faded slightly, and I no longer counted eating regular meals as a luxury. The fragile stability I'd established shattered one rainy April weekend when water began seeping through my apartment ceiling. What started as a small leak quickly became a cascading disaster as a pipe burst in the unit above mine. Within hours, my bedroom was uninhabitable, my mattress soaked, and several architecture models damaged. The repairs will take at least 2 weeks, the building manager explained apologetically. Insurance will cover the damages, but you'll need alternative accommodation in the meantime. With final projects due and limited funds for a hotel, I reluctantly called home. My mother answered, sounding distracted. "Of course you can stay here," she said after I explained my situation. "Your father and I are leaving tomorrow for a conference in Chicago until Wednesday, but you can use your key." The timing seemed fortuitous. I could salvage my projects, dry out my belongings, and have a quiet space to work without awkward interactions with my parents. I packed what remained dry and drove the 3 hours to Boston. The house was empty when I arrived. I settled into my old bedroom, which remained largely unchanged since high school, a time capsule of my former life. After a hot shower and real meal, I spread out my damaged projects on the dining room table to assess what could be salvaged. Working late into the night, I needed more drafting paper. Remembering my father kept supplies in his home office, quietly opened the door to the room that had always been off-limits without permission during my childhood. The office was immaculate as always, with everything meticulously organized. I found the paper in a cabinet and was about to leave when I noticed a folder on his desk labeled Amanda College. Curiosity and a sense of unease prompted me to look inside. What I found shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Inside was a complete financial record of Amanda's education, tuition payments for her private college totaling over $50,000 per year, fully paid by my parents. Additional documents showed a monthly allowance of $2,000 transferred to her account, more than I earned working 30 hours weekly. Credit card statements revealed shopping sprees, weekend trips with friends, and even a spring break vacation to Cancun. My hands trembling, I opened another drawer and found a folder with my name. It contained only loan applications I'd completed myself and a single page noting my partial scholarship. No parental contributions. No monthly support. Nothing. The contrast was so stark it felt like a physical blow. I sank into my father's office chair, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't just favoritism or different parenting approaches. This was deliberate deception, but there was more. Another folder labeled Investments revealed my parents' true financial situation: substantial retirement accounts, investment properties I'd never heard about, and stock holdings worth significant sums. A bank statement showed a healthy 6-figure balance in their main account. The tight finances they'd claimed when refusing to help with my education were entirely fabricated. Even more shocking was a document detailing a fully furnished apartment in Manhattan's Chelsea neighborhood, purchased 2 years ago and maintained for Amanda's weekend use while attending college upstate. The document noted it was conveniently located near her internship, an internship I'd never heard mentioned. Receipts for furnishings totaling thousands of dollars were paperclipped to maintenance fee statements. Meanwhile, I'd been sleeping on a second-hand mattress in an apartment with unreliable heating. I found myself methodically taking photos of each document with my phone, hands operating independently from my numb mind. I couldn't fully comprehend what I was seeing, but some part of me knew I needed evidence. Most devastating was finding old tax returns that showed my parents' income had actually increased significantly during my senior year of high school, precisely when they claimed financial hardship made it impossible to help with my education. The sound of a car in the driveway jolted me back to reality. Quickly returning everything to its exact position, I slipped out of the office just as keys jangled in the front door. "Sophia?" my mother called, stepping inside. "We caught an earlier flight since the last day of the conference was canceled." "Hi, Mom?" I managed, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Thanks for letting me stay." "Of course, honey," she said, giving me a quick hug that I had to force myself not to recoil from. "Is everything okay? You look pale. Just tired from dealing with the apartment situation," I lied, unable to meet her eyes. My father entered carrying their luggage. "Hello, Sophia. Sorry about your apartment troubles." I nodded, suddenly hyper-aware of every gesture, every word. These people who had raised me, who should have supported me equally with my sister, had deliberately set me up to struggle while lavishing Amanda with everything. The betrayal was so profound I couldn't begin to process it in their presence. "Think I'll go to bed early," I said, retreating to my room where I sat motionless on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. Sleep evaded me that night. Questions circled like vultures. Why did they do this? What had I done to deserve such treatment? Was their love conditional on something I couldn't provide? The harsh reality that maybe they simply didn't value me as much as my sister was too. Painful to accept. By morning, I'd made a decision. I couldn't confront them yet, not while emotionally raw and dependent on their roof. I needed time to think, to plan, to understand the full scope of their deception. I told them my apartment manager had called with news that emergency repairs were progressing faster than expected, allowing me to return early. The lie came easily, surprising me with how natural it felt to deceive them after discovering their years of lies. "Are you sure you need to rush back?" my mother asked, seemingly concerned. "You've hardly been here." "I have projects due," I replied, already packing my belongings. "Thanks for letting me stay." The drive back to school passed in a blur. Tears finally came once I was alone on the highway, great heaving sobs that forced me to pull over twice when my vision blurred too much to drive safely. By the time I reached campus, exhaustion had replaced the acute pain with a dull, hollow feeling. I checked into a cheap motel with my limited emergency fund, laid on the bed fully clothed, and stared at the water-stained ceiling. The foundation of my understanding of my family, my childhood, and myself had crumbled completely. Everything I'd attributed to financial necessity, the extra jobs, the loans, the sacrifices, had been artificial hardships imposed by the people who should have protected me. As dawn broke, one certainty emerged from the emotional wreckage. This deception couldn't continue unchallenged, but I needed an ally, someone with leverage and perspective. I reached for my phone and called Grandpa Harold. For 2 weeks after my discovery, I moved through life like a sleepwalker. I attended classes, completed assignments, and worked my remaining job with mechanical precision while internally processing the betrayal. The motel drained my finances until my apartment became habitable again, adding financial stress to emotional trauma. My roommates noticed the change. "Are you okay?" Mia asked one evening. "You seem different since the flood." I managed a weak smile. "Just tired. Final projects and everything." The truth remained locked inside. too raw to share with anyone except Grandpa Harold. Our initial phone conversation had been brief. I couldn't bring myself to explain everything without breaking down. He immediately sensed something was seriously wrong. "I'm coming to see you this weekend," he said firmly. "Whatever this is, you shouldn't face it alone." When Saturday arrived, I met him at a quiet cafe off campus. The moment I saw his familiar face, kind eyes creased with concern, silver hair neatly combed, something inside me cracked. He hugged me tightly as I fought back tears. "Now," he said once we were seated with coffee, "tell me everything." I did, starting with my parents' refusal to help with college and ending with the documents I'd discovered. I laid out the entire deception. I showed him the photos I'd taken, irrefutable evidence of the disparity between my parents' claims and reality. Grandpa Harold's expression shifted from disbelief to anger as he examined each image. When I finished, he sat silently for several moments, hands clasped tightly on the table. "I've been a fool," he finally said, voice low with controlled fury. "When your father told me they were supporting both you girls equally but that you insisted on being independent, I believed him. I shouldn't have." "They told you what?" My shock was genuine. "They've been lying to you too?" He nodded grimly. "For years, apparently. After our conversation when you were sick, I asked directly how much they were contributing to your education. Robert assured me they were covering half your tuition, but that you were determined to make your own way. For the rest, the depth of my parents' deception expanded with this revelation. They hadn't just lied to me, they'd created an elaborate fiction for everyone." "There's something else you should know," Grandpa Harold continued. "I've been providing financial support to your parents for years, contributions to what I thought was both your and Amanda's education fund. Your grandfather made good investments, Sophie. I'm not wealthy by any measure, but I've always prioritized helping with my grandchildren's futures." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My parents had taken money intended partially for my education and diverted it entirely to Amanda's, while forcing me into debt and exhaustion. "Why would they do this?" I whispered, the question that had haunted me for weeks. Grandpa Harold shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but it's time we found out. This stops now." We spent hours developing a plan, though my instinct was to confront my parents immediately. Grandpa Harold suggested waiting until Thanksgiving, now just 3 weeks away. "You need to finish your semester strong," he insisted. "Your education comes first. Besides, Amanda will be home then. She deserves to know the truth too. She's as much a victim of their manipulation as you are, just in a different way." Intervening weeks passed with excruciating slowness. I threw myself into final projects, channeling my anger and hurt into my work. Professor Carlson commented on the emotional depth suddenly evident in my designs, unaware of its source. I avoided calls from my parents, texting brief responses about being busy with end-of-semester work. Each message from them now seemed suspect, their expressions of pride or interest hollow, knowing what I did about their true feelings. Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear. I drove to Boston with a strange calm, knowing the family dynamic I'd known. My entire life would not survive the day. Grandpa Harold would arrive separately, timing his entrance for maximum impact. Amanda had already arrived when I pulled into the driveway. She greeted me with her usual casual hug, chattering about her sorority's formal and classes she found totally boring, but whatever. Looking at her now, I couldn't summon the resentment I'd expected. She hadn't created this situation. My mother bustled around the kitchen preparing the traditional feast, pausing occasionally to ask Amanda about school friends or comment on her new haircut. My father watched football in the living room, calling out questions about my apartment situation. Without looking away from the screen, the familiar patterns felt surreal given what I knew. I moved through pre-dinner pleasantries like an actress playing a role, waiting for the right moment. It came after turkey was served, when everyone had filled their plates and the conversation lulled. I set down my fork, took a deep breath, and spoke clearly. "I need to discuss something important with all of you." My mother's smile faltered. "Can it wait until after dinner, dear? This is family time." "That's exactly why it can't wait," I replied evenly. "This is about our family." I retrieved my phone from my pocket and placed it on the table, screen displaying the first of many financial documents. 3 weeks ago, when I stayed here during my apartment repairs, I found something in Dad's office. Actually, I found many things. My father's face drained of color. "You went through my private papers?" "I went looking for drafting paper," I corrected. "But yes, I saw your folders labeled with our names. I saw the tuition payments for Amanda's college. I saw the monthly allowance that exceeds what I make working 30 hours a week while trying to maintain my GPA. I saw the Manhattan apartment you purchased for her weekend use. And I saw your actual financial statements that prove you've been lying about not being able to help me with school." Silence descended on the table. Amanda looked genuinely confused, glancing between our parents with furrowed brows. "What is she talking about?" she asked. "You said Sophia wanted to be independent. You said she refused your help." Another lie, revealed. I hadn't imagined this twist, that my parents had created false narratives for both of us. My mother recovered first. "Sophia, this is inappropriate dinner conversation. We can discuss this privately." "No," I interrupted firmly. "No more secrets. No more private conversations where the truth gets twisted. Amanda deserves to know how you've manipulated both of us. I deserve an explanation for why you forced me into exhaustion and debt while giving her everything." My father's expression hardened. "You had no right to snoop through confidential information. This is a violation of trust." The irony of his statement struck me as darkly comical. A violation of trust? What would you call systematically favoring one child over another while lying to both about it? What would you call taking Grandpa Harold's money meant for both our educations and spending it all on Amanda? At the mention of Grandpa Harold, both my parents paled further. Amanda looked increasingly distressed. "Is this true?" she asked our parents. "Have you been giving me everything and Sophia nothing?" My mother reached for her hand. "It's more complicated than that, sweetie. Your sister has always been so capable, so independent. You needed more support. Stop." My voice cut through. Her excuses. "Stop pretending this was about need. Amanda isn't helpless. She's perfectly capable too. This was a choice you made because for whatever reason, you decided I deserve less." My father stood abruptly. "That's enough. You've always been difficult, Sophia. Always questioning, always challenging us. Amanda appreciates what we do for her. You just take and demand more." His words struck deep, revealing the ugly truth I'd suspected but couldn't accept. Their support was conditional on my compliance and gratitude, not my actual needs. "Is that why?" I asked quietly. "Because I don't blindly accept everything. Because I have my own opinions and goals." Before either could answer, the doorbell rang. Perfect timing. "That would be Grandpa Harold," I said. "He knows everything too." The color drained completely from my father's face as he realized the additional implications. He moved mechanically to answer the door while my mother sat frozen, hands trembling slightly. Grandpa Harold entered the dining room with a gravity I'd never seen in him before. His normally warm eyes were steel as he surveyed the table scene. "I see Sophia has started the conversation," he said calmly, taking the empty seat beside me. "Good. Because I have questions of my own, starting with why the money I've given you for years, specified for both your children's education, has only benefited one." My father attempted damage control. "Dad, this is a misunderstanding." "Don't insult my intelligence, Robert," Grandpa Harold cut him off. "I've seen the evidence. Bank statements, tuition payments, property purchases. The numbers don't lie. Even if you have. Repeatedly." He placed his own folder on the table, documents he'd gathered independently verifying everything I'd found. For 10 years, I've been contributing to what you called the Girls' College Fund. That's approximately $200,000 you've received from me with the explicit understanding it would benefit both my granddaughters. Where is Sophia's portion? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Amanda looked between our parents and grandfather, tears forming in her eyes as she began to understand the magnitude of the deception. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, Sophia, I didn't know they were doing this." I believed her. Amanda had always been self-centered, but never deliberately cruel. My father attempted a new approach. The money went where it was needed most. Sophia received scholarships. "Because I worked myself to exhaustion to earn them," I interjected. "Because I had no choice." Amanda required more financial support for her social development, my mother added weakly. Grandpa Harold's laugh was without humor. Social development? Sophia has been working multiple jobs while maintaining excellent grades. She collapsed from exhaustion last winter. Meanwhile, Amanda has a luxury apartment in Manhattan she barely uses. This isn't about need. It's about preference. The harsh truth silenced the room again. Amanda pushed her plate away, looking nauseated. "I've made a decision," Grandpa Harold continued after a moment. "Since you've misappropriated funds I intended for both girls, I'll be handling their support directly from now on. I'm establishing independent trusts for each of them. Money you cannot access or control." My father's face flushed with anger. "You can't do that. We're her parents." "Parents who have betrayed their daughter's trust in the most fundamental way," Grandpa Harold replied evenly. "And I absolutely can do this. My alternative option is to pursue legal action regarding the misappropriation of funds I provided under false pretenses. Would you prefer that route?" The threat landed with devastating force. My father, an accountant intimately familiar with financial law, understood the implications immediately. "Additionally," Grandpa Harold continued, "any future financial support from me will be contingent on equal treatment of both your daughters. If I see continued evidence of this favoritism, you'll receive nothing further from me. Not for retirement, not for emergencies, nothing." The ultimatum transformed my parents' expressions from defensive to alarmed. They'd never expected consequences for their actions, certainly not financial ones that would affect them directly. I looked at Amanda and saw tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to me. "I never would have accepted all this if I'd known what they were doing to you." For the first time in years, I felt genuine connection with my sister. We'd both been manipulated, cast in roles not of our choosing. She as the needy, favored child. Me as the neglected, independent one. "This isn't your fault," I told her honestly. "You didn't create this situation." As the confrontation continued around us, my parents scrambling to justify their actions, Grandpa Harold systematically dismantling each excuse, Amanda moved to sit beside me, taking my hand under the table in silent solidarity. The Thanksgiving dinner sat forgotten, turkey growing cold as years of deception were finally exposed to light. The family I thought I had never existed. But as painful as this revelation was, it cleared the way for something potentially more valuable: truth. The days following Thanksgiving brought seismic shifts in every relationship within our family. I returned to campus to complete final projects and exams, operating on autopilot while processing the emotional aftermath of the confrontation. Grandpa Harold kept his word, immediately establishing separate trusts for Amanda and me. Mine provided enough to cover tuition, housing, and basic expenses, allowing me to reduce my work hours to a manageable 10 per week. "This isn't a handout," he clarified during a long phone call. "It's what should have been yours all along. Use it to excel, not just survive." My parents' reaction evolved in stages. Initially, there were desperate attempts to justify their actions. Through lengthy emails explaining their parenting philosophy and how they believed they were preparing me for the real world. When those went unanswered, they shifted to anger. with my father sending a particularly biting message suggesting I'd manipulated Grandpa Harold against them. Finally, when their attempts at controlling the narrative failed, they attempted reconciliation through carefully worded apologies that acknowledged the perceived unfairness without truly accepting responsibility for the deliberate deception. I let these messages accumulate unread after the first few. I needed space to determine my own feelings before engaging with their explanations or apologies. The most surprising aftermath came from Amanda. 3 days after Thanksgiving, she appeared at my apartment door unannounced, eyes red from crying, clutching a duffel bag. "I couldn't stay there," she explained as I let her in. "Not after knowing what they did to you. Can I crash here for a few days?" Those few days turned into 2 weeks of honest conversations that bridged the gulf our parents had created between us. Amanda was confronting uncomfortable truths about her upbringing and her role in our family dynamic. I always knew I was favored, she admitted one evening as we shared takeout on my small couch. "But I thought it was because I needed more help than you. They always described you as this super capable person who had everything together, while I was the one who needed extra support." "They constructed completely different narratives for each of us," I said, passing her the container of noodles. "They told me you needed special support while expecting me to be completely self-sufficient. They told you I wanted independence while making me work to exhaustion." Amanda nodded, pushing food around with her chopsticks. "The worst part is realizing how much I bought into it. I never questioned why I deserved all these advantages. I just accepted them as my due." Her self-awareness surprised me. The sister I'd known had always seemed oblivious to privilege, taking extras as her birthright. This new reflective Amanda was someone I could potentially connect with as an equal. During her stay, she made a decision that shocked me. She would transfer to a state university with her trust fund, move out of the Manhattan apartment, and get a part-time job. "I need to learn who I am without all the excess," she explained. "And I need to know I can succeed on my own merits." When she returned to pack her dorm room before the holiday break, she informed our parents of her decision. According to her texts, they reacted with disbelief and attempted to dissuade her, which only strengthened her resolve. As for me, the spring semester began with transformative changes. With adequate financial support, I moved to a small but well-maintained apartment closer to campus. I reduced my work hours to focus primarily on my education. Most importantly, I started sleeping regularly and eating proper meals, basic self-care that had been impossible during my years of overwork. The change was immediately evident in my academic performance and mental health. Professor Carlson commented on the remarkable evolution in my design work, which now demonstrated both technical precision and creative vision. I found myself participating more in class discussions and studio critiques, no longer too exhausted to engage. I also began seeing a campus therapist to process the years of familial betrayal. Dr. Lin helped me understand that my parents' treatment wasn't a reflection of my worth, but a manifestation of their own dysfunction. "What they did says nothing about your value and everything about their limitations," she explained during one particularly difficult session. "Children aren't supposed to earn parental support. It should be freely given." These insights helped me gradually release the shame and self-doubt I'd carried for years. The nagging question of what I'd done wrong, or what was inherently unlovable about me that caused my parents to withhold support. My relationship with my parents remained distant but civil. After 2 months of limited contact, I agreed to a phone call where I established clear boundaries. "I'm not ready to pretend everything is normal," I told them. "I need time and evidence of real change before I can consider rebuilding trust." My father bristled at the word evidence, but my mother seemed to understand the fundamental breach that had occurred. For the first time, she didn't offer excuses or minimizations. "We failed you," she said simply. "I failed you as a mother. I can see that now, and I'm truly sorry." Whether this represented genuine insight or another attempt at manipulation remained to be seen, but I acknowledged her words with cautious appreciation. Meanwhile, Amanda's transformation continued. She transferred to a university in a neighboring state, moved into a modest apartment with 2 roommates, and secured a campus job in the admissions office. We spoke weekly, our conversations growing increasingly open and supportive. "I'm struggling with statistics," she confessed during one call. "I've never had to work this hard at school before." "Want me to help?" I offered. Math was always my strong suit. These tutoring sessions became regular video calls where we not only tackled her coursework, but continued healing our relationship. The contrast with our previous dynamic was striking. Instead of competition and distance, we were developing genuine sisterly support. Grandpa Harold remained my steadfast ally throughout this period of change. He visited monthly, reviewing my portfolio and offering perspective gained from his own experience navigating family conflict. "Your parents aren't evil people," he told me during one visit. "They're deeply flawed people who made terrible choices. Understanding that distinction helps you heal without carrying hatred." His wisdom proved valuable as I navigated complex emotions about my family. I didn't want to remain angry forever, but neither could I simply forgive and forget such fundamental betrayal. By the end of spring semester, I'd achieved the highest GPA of my academic career and received a prestigious summer internship with an architectural firm specializing in sustainable design. For the first time, I could imagine a future defined not by struggle and scarcity, but by opportunity and growth. Amanda, too, was finding her footing. She discovered an aptitude for marketing and communications once she applied herself genuinely. Her natural charisma, previously channeled into social climbing, became an asset in collaborative projects and presentations. "I actually like earning good grades," she told me with surprise in her voice. "It feels completely different when I know I did the work myself." Our parents watched these developments from a distance, occasionally attempting to insert themselves, but largely respecting the boundaries we'd established. I learned from Grandpa Harold that they had entered marriage counseling and financial therapy, small steps toward addressing the dysfunction that had shaped our family. As summer approached, I faced an unexpected opportunity that would cement my transformation from victim to architect of my own future. The firm where I'd interned offered to sponsor my application to their alma mater's prestigious graduate program, Cornell's Master of Architecture. "Your portfolio demonstrates exceptional promise," my supervisor wrote in the recommendation letter. "Your unique perspective on accessible, sustainable design reflects both technical mastery and genuine empathy. The validation from industry professionals, recognition based purely on merit rather than family connection or privilege, represented everything I'd worked toward." When the acceptance letter arrived in late July, I felt a profound sense of vindication. I had survived my parents' betrayal and emerged stronger, not because of their tough love approach, but despite their deliberate disadvantaging. The achievement was entirely mine. Yet I couldn't have reached this point without Grandpa Harold's intervention and the subsequent truths it revealed. As I packed for my move to Cornell, I came across an old sketchbook from high school containing my earliest architectural drawings. Flipping through the pages, I was struck by the persistent vision evident even in those amateur sketches. Spaces designed to welcome everyone equally. Structures that provided both beauty and practical support to all who entered them. I realized then that my experience had shaped my architectural philosophy in profound ways. I didn't just want to design buildings, I wanted to create spaces where everyone felt valued, where access wasn't determined by privilege or favoritism, but by need and human dignity. This insight became the foundation for my graduate studies and beyond, transforming pain into purpose in ways my parents could never have anticipated when they made their damaging choices years before. 3 years after that fateful Thanksgiving confrontation, I stood in Cornell's grand auditorium wearing a master's graduate cap and gown. My thesis project, an innovative community center combining affordable housing, education spaces, and urban agriculture, had received the department's highest honors. As I accepted my diploma, I searched the audience for familiar faces. Grandpa Harold sat in the front row, his eyes shining with unmistakable pride. Beside him was Amanda, who had taken a day off from her new marketing job to attend. They cheered loudly when my name was called, drawing smiles from neighboring families. Noticeably absent were my parents. I had sent them an invitation, more as an acknowledgement of our biological connection than an expectation of attendance. Their response, a congratulatory card with a check I promptly returned, suggested they still didn't fully understand the nature of the wound they'd inflicted or what genuine healing would require. The journey to this graduation stage had been transformative in ways that transcended academic achievement. Cornell's program had challenged and nurtured me, allowing my architectural vision to mature without the constant weight of financial anxiety. My designs had evolved from technically proficient to genuinely innovative, incorporating principles of equality and accessibility that reflected my personal philosophy. After the ceremony, Grandpa Harold embraced me tightly. "Your grandfather would have been so proud," he said, voice thick with emotion. "He always said you had the vision to build something remarkable." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, realizing the full truth of those words. Without his intervention, I might have continued struggling indefinitely, never discovering the extent of my parents' deception or experiencing the freedom to pursue excellence unburdened. Amanda hugged me next, her enthusiasm genuine. "That community center design is incredible, Sophia. The way you integrated the learning spaces with living areas, it's like you created an actual community, not just a building." Her observation touched me deeply. Amanda had become surprisingly insightful during her own journey of self-discovery. After transferring universities, she'd flourished academically and personally, graduating with honors in marketing communications. More importantly, she'd developed independence and self-awareness that transformed our relationship from strained tolerance to genuine affection. We celebrated with dinner at an upscale restaurant Grandpa Harold insisted on, despite my protests, about the expense. "Indulge an old man," he said with a wink. "Some achievements deserve proper recognition." Over dessert, Amanda raised her glass. "To Sophia, the first Williams to earn a master's degree, and definitely the most determined person I know. And to new beginnings," Grandpa Harold added, "the best kind built on truth and earned through perseverance." The following week, I began my professional career at a respected architectural firm in Boston, deliberately choosing my hometown rather than avoiding it. I wanted to build my future in the city of my past, transforming painful memories through present success. My first apartment was small but stylish, purchased with savings from graduate fellowships and a small inheritance Grandpa Harold had set aside for each grandchild upon graduation. For the first time, I created a space entirely my own, designed with intention rather than desperation. Within months, my work began attracting notice. My perspective on inclusive design, spaces that welcomed people regardless of economic status or background, resonated with clients interested in urban renewal projects. By my second year at the firm, I was leading small teams on community-focused developments. Amanda and I continued building our adult relationship, meeting monthly for dinner and regular video calls between. She'd secured a position with a marketing agency specializing in nonprofit clients, work that aligned with her newly discovered values. "I never thought I'd care about making a difference," she confessed during one of our dinners. "But it feels so much better than just accumulating stuff or status." "You always had depth," I assured her. "You just needed space to discover it yourself." Our conversations often turned to our ongoing relationship with our parents, which remained complicated for both of us. Amanda maintained more regular contact than I did, occasionally joining them for holidays or family events. "They're trying, in their way," she reported after one such visit. "Dad still struggles with admitting how wrong they were, but Mom seems genuinely regretful." My own interactions remained limited and carefully boundaried. Occasional lunch meetings with my mother revealed a woman attempting to understand her. Mistakes, but still fundamentally shaped by the beliefs that led to them. "We thought we were doing what was best," she said during one such meeting. "We believed you were stronger, more capable of handling independence." That's the problem, I replied gently. You confused stronger with deserving less support. Being capable doesn't mean needing less love or practical help. These conversations never fully resolved our differences, but gradually built a fragile bridge of understanding. I didn't seek close reconnection, having built a fulfilling life with chosen family, friends, mentors, and colleagues who valued me unconditionally. Grandpa Harold remained central to this chosen family until his health began declining in my third postgraduate year. When he was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, I temporarily reduced my work hours to help with his care. During those precious months, our roles reversed as I supported the man who had changed the trajectory of my life. Do you regret confronting them? He asked one afternoon as we sat in his garden. Your parents, I mean. I considered the question carefully. No. Living with the truth, however painful, is better than living with lies. The confrontation freed both Amanda and me to become who we really are. He nodded slowly. That's the thing. About truth, it doesn't create problems, it reveals them. Problems that already existed but were hidden. This insight became increasingly meaningful as I continued building my professional reputation. Transparency and integrity became hallmarks of my architectural practice and personal relationships. I developed a particular focus on projects serving first-generation college students, designing campus spaces that supported their unique challenges. When approached by my alma mater to create a residence hall specifically addressing needs of working students, I accepted immediately. The design incorporated flexible study spaces, built-in time-saving amenities, and natural light prioritized for mental well-being, all elements I would have benefited from during my own undergraduate struggles. At the building's dedication ceremony, I was asked to speak about my inspiration. Without naming names or specific circumstances, I shared the essence of my experience. Educational spaces should never reinforce inequality, I told the audience of administrators, donors, and students. They should actively work to dismantle it. This building is designed to honor the extra effort many students make just to be here and to ensure that effort is directed toward learning rather than mere survival. The speech received unexpected media attention, leading to a series of articles about accessibility in higher education. This visibility brought an invitation to establish a scholarship fund through the university for students working while pursuing architectural degrees. With Grandpa Harold's guidance, I structured the fund to provide not just tuition assistance, but stipends for living expenses, addressing the holistic challenges I had faced. When Grandpa Harold passed peacefully the following spring, his legacy extended far beyond the financial support he'd provided. He had taught me that justice sometimes requires disruption, that boundaries are necessary for healing, and that true family is defined by actions rather than blood. His funeral brought my first extended interaction with my father in years. Standing awkwardly beside the coffin, Robert Williams looked simultaneously older and smaller than I remembered. Your grandfather was very proud of you, he said, breaking the uncomfortable silence between us. He talked about your work constantly. He was the parent I needed when you and Mom couldn't be, I replied without anger, simply stating a truth we both recognized. My father nodded, something like genuine regret crossing his features. I know, and I'm sorry for that, sorrier than I can express. It wasn't a comprehensive apology or full acknowledgement of the harm done, but it was perhaps the most honest communication we'd shared in years. I accepted it with a nod, neither demanding more nor dismissing the offering. As I approach my 30th birthday, I've come to understand that healing isn't a destination, but a continuing journey. The injustice I experienced shaped me profoundly, but it doesn't define me. The buildings I design, the scholarship recipients I mentor, and the relationships I nurture reflect choices I've made rather than reactions to my parents' failures. Amanda and I have developed a relationship neither of us could have imagined during our childhood. One based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than competition or resentment. She recently confided that she's considering graduate school herself, having discovered academic interests beyond what our parents ever encouraged. I keep thinking about what I might have accomplished if I'd applied myself from the beginning, she admitted during a weekend visit to my home. Don't go down that road, I advised. We can't change the past, only build something better going forward. This perspective governs my ongoing relationship with our parents as well. I've established careful boundaries that protect my well-being, while allowing for limited, structured interaction. Complete estrangement isn't necessary, but neither is pretending the past didn't happen. We exist in a careful equilibrium of acknowledgement, without intimacy. The most profound lesson from this journey isn't about familial betrayal, but about self-worth and perspective. I now understand that my value was never determined by my parents' treatment, that financial support wasn't something I needed to earn through extraordinary effort or perfect compliance. Every student who receives assistance through my scholarship fund hears this message explicitly. You deserve support because of your humanity, not despite your need for help. Your worth isn't measured by independence, but by integrity and purpose. This truth guides my personal and professional life, a foundation more solid than any building I might design. The structures I create will eventually age and be replaced, but this understanding of inherent human value remains timeless. As I review plans for my newest project, an intergenerational community center combining senior housing with student apartments, I recognize that my experiences have given me unique insight into creating spaces where everyone feels equally welcomed and valued. My story continues to unfold, not defined by what was withheld from me, but by what I choose to give. The betrayal that once seemed overwhelming has become just one chapter in a longer narrative of resilience, purpose, and ultimately, freedom. Have you ever experienced favoritism in your family or witnessed it in others? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about overcoming family challenges and building a meaningful life on your own terms. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share this video with them. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by the integrity and purpose you bring to your own journey.